After a long absence, I return to the house of my childhood. It hasn't changed. Still the same old farmhouse on the outskirts of town, with its peeling walls and view of the abandoned greenhouse. The silence that surrounds it always used to weigh heavily on me, but now, as I stand in front of it again, it feels almost comforting. I park the car on the cracked driveway, the wheels crunching on the gravel, and for a moment I just sit there, hesitating. The old house stares back at me, like an old acquaintance whose eyes hold all the forgotten memories. I step out of the car, and the damp autumn air immediately wraps itself around me, carrying the scent of decaying leaves. I clutch my bag tighter and slowly walk toward the door, my footsteps echoing in the stillness, every inch of the path familiar yet strange, as if time had suspended itself in this place. The door creaks when I push it open. The smell inside is the same. Dusty, old wood mixed with the faint scent of something else, something I can't quite place. I step inside, closing the door behind me, but the silence remains, thick and enveloping. I place my bag on the old table by the door. My fingers trace the surface, a familiar motion, yet it feels like I'm touching a ghost. It's all the same. The memories flood in, uninvited, and I can feel the weight of the past pressing against me. I don't know if I'm ready for this. I don't know if I ever will be. But as I stand there, the house seems to settle around me, as though it's been waiting for me all this time, holding its breath. And then, just like that, I realize it's not the house that has changed. It's me. The door opens, and there he is, James. His presence is as heavy as the silence that hangs between us. His eyes meet mine, and for a second the world seems to stop. My heart lurches, but I can't move. I want to speak, to say something, anything, but my words are caught in my throat, trapped by the tension that has always existed between us. He stands in the doorway, just as I remember him, hands folded across his chest, his posture rigid, as though he's waiting for something, or maybe for me. There's no warmth in his expression, no smile, just a deep, inscrutable look in his eyes. He's studying me, sizing me up, as if nothing has changed. But I know better. Everything has changed. "You're back," he finally says, his voice low and steady, without a hint of surprise. I nod, feeling small under his gaze. It's as if the years between us have disappeared, and we're back to where we left off. The same distance, the same coldness, the same silence. He doesn't move to hug me, doesn't offer a greeting beyond those simple words. And I don't reach for him either. I'm afraid of what might happen if I do. There's something in the air now, something unspoken, something that has settled into the very fabric of this house. I don't know if it's a fracture, a crack in everything that came before, or if it's the weight of everything that we never said. We just stand there, looking at each other, and the silence stretches, thick and oppressive. Time has lost all meaning. It feels like it's always been this way. Finally, he steps aside, motioning for me to come in, but it's not an invitation. It's more like a command, and I can't help but obey. I step inside, and the door clicks shut behind me with a finality that makes me shiver. The morning light creeps through the cracked window, casting long shadows across the table. The air in the kitchen is thick, heavy with unspoken words as I sit across from James. I can feel the tension between us, palpable, as if it's pressing against my chest, making it harder to breathe. The soft clink of utensils on plates is the only sound that fills the space, but it's somehow louder than it should be. James doesn't look at me. His eyes are focused on his glass of water, adjusting it slightly as if the mere act of moving it around might be enough to distract him. His concentration is absolute, and I can't help but wonder if he's avoiding me on purpose or if he's simply lost in his own thoughts, the way he's always been. I want to ask him something, anything, to break the suffocating silence, but the words won't come. My hands tremble slightly as I reach for a dishcloth and begin drying the plates, anything to occupy myself. My mind races, filled with memories of a time when we would have talked about everything, shared our thoughts without hesitation. But now? Now there's just this unbearable, painful stillness that fills the entire room. Through the window, I see him, James, out in the garden. He's moving slowly, methodically, as if each step is deliberate. He doesn't look up as I watch him from the kitchen. The figure of him, tall and quiet, working in the yard, seems almost like a shadow, a part of the land itself. He's so absorbed in his work that it's as if I'm not even there. And for a moment, I wonder if it would be easier if I wasn't. I shake the thought away, focusing on the dishes in front of me. I scrub at a stubborn stain, my fingers gripping the sponge tighter than necessary. Everything feels out of place here, like I'm watching a version of my life that doesn't quite fit. James, the house, the silence, they're all so familiar, but they're also so distant, like looking at something through a fogged window. And then, just like that, my eyes flicker to him again. He's still in the garden, not moving any faster or slower, his back to me, but I can feel the pull of his presence. It's impossible not to. I'm here. He's here. But we're not really together, are we? The night is quiet, as it always is in this house. The wind rustles through the trees outside, a soft murmur that only adds to the stillness. I lie in bed, my body stiff with the weight of everything I haven't said, everything I don't know how to say. Sleep is just out of reach, slipping through my fingers like smoke. My mind races, and every creak of the floorboards beneath me feels like a whisper, like a call, like something's pulling me out of the safe cocoon of my blankets. Then I hear it. A sound. Faint at first, but growing louder. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate. My pulse quickens, and I lie still, trying to convince myself it's nothing, just my mind playing tricks on me. But the steps come closer, slow and measured, like someone knows exactly where they're going. My breath catches in my throat. The door to my room creaks open, and I can feel him, James, before I see him. He stands there, just out of the corner of my vision, his presence filling the room, suffocating the space between us. I can't see his face, but I know he's there, watching me, waiting. His footsteps are the only sound, each one deliberate until he stops at the foot of the bed. There's nothing but the steady rhythm of my breathing in the silence, and I can feel the air in the room shift. It feels like everything has stopped, like time is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I don't move. I can't. My body is frozen in place, caught in the web of this moment. His eyes are on me, even though I can't see them. There's something there, something unspoken that hangs between us like a thread stretched too tight, threatening to snap. And then, without warning, he leans down. I feel his presence draw closer, the heat of his body invading my space. I close my eyes, heart pounding in my chest, as I wait for whatever comes next. His lips brush against mine, a soft, tentative touch, but it's enough to shatter everything. The world tilts, and I feel everything I thought I knew about myself unravel in an instant. I don't pull away. I don't want to. I don't want this moment to end, but I know it will change everything. For a heartbeat, time stands still, and then it's over. He pulls back, and we both lie in the quiet of the room, the weight of what just happened settling between us. Neither of us speaks, but I don't need him to. I already know. Nothing will ever be the same again. The days that follow are like walking through a haze. Everything feels muted, distant, as if I'm watching my life unfold from behind a veil. We avoid each other, no more stolen moments in the dark, no more looks that say everything without words. But the tension is unbearable, thick in the air, lingering in every room like an uninvited guest. James spends most of his time at the window now, staring out at the garden or the distant fields. He's lost in his own world, one that I can't touch, and it's almost as if he's forgotten I'm here. I try to fill the silence with the mundane, chores, the hum of the radio in the kitchen, but it's a poor disguise for the chaos inside me. I feel like I'm falling apart with every step I take. I don't know how to go back, how to erase what we shared, but I also don't know how to move forward. I catch myself watching him sometimes. It's impossible not to. His silhouette framed by the window, the way his hands seem to move on their own, always busy, always intent on something I can't see. He's so focused, so absorbed in whatever is going on inside his mind, that it's almost as though I'm invisible, and yet, I feel him. I feel the weight of his presence, even when he's not near me. There are moments when I almost speak to him, when the words form on my lips, but they die in my throat. The silence between us has become a wall, impenetrable and cold, and I can't figure out how to break through it. I try to busy myself with small tasks, cleaning, cooking, anything to keep my hands moving, my mind from racing, but nothing works. His gaze, even when it's not directly on me, is always there, and it burns. At night I lie in bed, tossing and turning, unable to find any comfort. I think about him, about what happened, about what it means, and I feel myself unraveling. The house, once familiar and safe, now feels like a trap. Each creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind through the cracks in the windows seems to echo with the things left unsaid. The silence is louder now. It's suffocating, and I feel like I'm drowning in it. But no matter how hard I try, I can't escape. It's everywhere, the house, the air, the space between us, and it's slowly driving me mad. The sound of the front door opening breaks the stillness of the house, and I know he's back. My boyfriend. I don't feel relief, only a sharp, uncomfortable tightening in my chest. It's strange, the way his presence shifts the dynamic of everything. The house, which had been filled with the suffocating quiet of unspoken things between me and James, suddenly feels alive again. The rush of noise, the sounds of footsteps and laughter, the clatter of keys being dropped on the table, it's all too much. The change is jarring, like a record skipping off its groove. And for the first time since I arrived, I feel something stir inside me, a reminder of what my life used to be before all of this. But it's not the comfort I thought it would be. As soon as he enters, I catch a glimpse of James in the hallway. His face doesn't change. His expression is unreadable, blank, as always. But something shifts in the air. Something changes in the way he holds himself. His posture stiffens. There's a tension in the room, an unspoken understanding that ripples through us all. I can see it in his eyes, that flicker of something I recognize. It's the realization that everything is different now, that whatever fragile understanding we had between us is irreparably broken. James doesn't leave, though. He doesn't retreat. He just stands there, watching me, as if nothing has happened, as if he hasn't felt everything I've felt, as if the quiet between us hasn't torn at the edges of what we once had. And then, without a word, he moves past us, his footsteps heavier than usual, his presence filling the space even as he walks away. But I know in that moment that something has shifted between us. There's no going back. I turn to look at my boyfriend, but I can't meet his eyes. His voice floats to me from the kitchen, asking if I want coffee, but it's distant, like it's coming from another room entirely. I nod, my thoughts elsewhere, my heart elsewhere. I catch James's gaze one more time, and in that fleeting moment, everything is clear. He knows. He understands that I can't stay, but I can't leave. Not now. Not with everything that has happened. It's all too much, too tangled, too broken, and yet we're stuck, standing at the edge of something we can't undo. The silence has become more than just the space between us. It has become a living thing, and as much as I try to turn away to pretend I can fix everything with a smile, I can't. The damage is done. James leaves soon after, disappearing into the shadows of the house, and I'm left alone with the knowledge that this chapter is over, that I can't keep pretending anymore. My boyfriend, oblivious to the war raging in my chest, hums quietly to himself in the kitchen. But I know, deep down, that I've already made my choice. The kitchen feels different now. The light from the small window casts long shadows across the counter, illuminating the quiet spaces between us. My boyfriend is humming softly as he sips his coffee, his back turned to me, absorbed in some thought of his own. But I can't concentrate on anything else except the tightness in my chest, the weight of the words that have been sitting there for days, threatening to spill out. The silence between us has stretched, and I can no longer hide from it. I look up at him, his profile blurred by the movement of the steam rising from his cup. I want to speak, to tell him everything, but I don't know where to start. The truth is so much harder to say than I imagined. I've spent days trying to push it away, to convince myself that I can make this work, that nothing is broken. But every time I see James, every time our eyes meet, every time I feel that pull between us again, it's like the air is too thick to breathe. And now, with the weight of my confession pressing down on me, I know I can't hide it anymore. I take a deep breath and stand up from the table, my feet cold against the floor as I cross to where he stands. He doesn't notice me at first, and for a moment, I just stand there, unsure of what to say, how to bridge this impossible gap. My heart is racing, and I feel the words bubbling up inside me, desperate to be freed. He turns around, his gaze softening when he sees me, but it's the same gaze, the same casual smile, the one that never quite reaches his eyes. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending. James, I whisper before I can stop myself. The name escapes me like a confession of its own. I see him stiffen at the sound of his name, his shoulders tightening, and the moment stretches between us. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. He knows. He always has. He steps toward me, closer than before, and I can feel the heat from his body, the air between us thick with unsaid things. I want to turn away, to run, to find some escape from the weight of his proximity. But I can't. I stay, rooted to the spot, and for the first time since I arrived, I feel like I'm drowning in the truth. I need to tell you something, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. My hands are shaking, my breath shallow, but I can't back out now. I've been lying to you. I've been lying to myself. His eyes lock onto mine, steady and intense, but there's nothing soft about them. There's no reassurance, no comfort. Only the same impenetrable silence that's been between us all along. The door creaks open, and I hear the sound of footsteps. My boyfriend. He's back. His voice floats into the kitchen, calling my name, asking if I'm okay. I freeze. Everything I was about to say catches in my throat, and I feel the words dissipate, lost in the tension that has now filled the room. There's no more time. I glance at James, his face unreadable, and then back at the door, at the figure standing there. There is nothing more to say, nothing more that can be said. My boyfriend enters the room, the weight of his presence bringing a new kind of heaviness. James doesn't flinch, doesn't retreat. He just stands there, watching me, the distance between us now impossible to ignore. And I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix any of this. All I know is that nothing will ever be the same again. The morning light creeps in through the same cracked window, just as it always has. But today, it feels different. The air is still, as though the house itself is holding its breath, waiting for something to finally break. James is gone. He left quietly, without a word, before the sun had fully risen, and I know that he's not coming back. The house feels emptier now, even though the silence remains the same. I sit at the kitchen table, staring at the cup of coffee in front of me. But I don't drink. I can't. My mind is still tangled in the events of the night before, in the painful words that I never got the chance to speak. There's nothing left to say. Not to him, not to myself. The door to the house creaks open again, and I don't need to look up to know who it is. My boyfriend walks in, his presence familiar, but now somehow distant. He doesn't speak right away, but I can feel him watching me. I feel the weight of his gaze, but it's nothing like it was before. It's not comfort, it's not love, it's an expectation, a question without an answer. James is gone, I say, my voice thick with something I can't quite place, maybe relief, maybe loss, but it's the truth, and it's the only thing left to say. He left. I watch his reaction. There's a flicker in his eyes, something dark, but it's gone so quickly that I almost wonder if I imagined it. He doesn't say anything, but I can see the change in his face. The mask has slipped just for a moment, and in that brief moment I realize something that I had known all along but had been too afraid to admit. This relationship, my life here, it's broken. It has been for a long time. I'm not the person I was when I first arrived, and neither is he. We've both changed in ways neither of us can ignore. There's no going back. There's no fixing this. I meet his eyes. There's no anger, no accusations, only the recognition of the inevitable. He knows what I've known for a long time now. "I'm sorry," I say quietly, though the apology feels hollow. "I don't think I can keep doing this." He doesn't argue. He doesn't plead. He simply nods, as if he's been expecting it all along. The silence that fills the space between us is heavy, but it's different now. It's not the suffocating weight of everything left unsaid. It's the silence of finality, of acceptance. He turns and walks out of the kitchen without another word. I don't follow him. I don't need to. I can hear the sound of his footsteps fading away, the door opening and closing behind him, and I know that he's gone. For good. The house feels empty now. Not just because James has left, but because I've let everything go. I look around at the walls that have been a part of me for so long, the memories that have clung to every corner, and I realize something else. I'm not lost anymore. I don't feel the weight of the past pressing on me. I'm free. I'm not bound by anything or anyone. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can breathe again.